Namaste and greetings from the Observer Research Foundation, ORF. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the ORF Wednesday webinar. As some of you would know, we began our Wednesday webinar series in mid-April, and over the past 2 months have brought to you renowned experts from all over the world to discuss issues ranging from foreign policy to counter-terrorism to education to social sciences, developmental aspects, and so on and so forth. And these webinars have discussed complex issues that have emerged in the world besieged with the pandemic, how these unprecedented issues have changed the way the world functions, and what are the ways in which the world will evolve in the post-pandemic days. So friends, today's Wednesday webinar discusses another important topic that in a sense affects all of us individually. And is to discuss the world of cinema and video entertainment and how that's being impacted by the pandemic and what is the future roadmap that this very important sector, which has a huge, maybe not a great contribution to the national GDP as such, but if there was an emotional GDP of a nation, then I think for a country as crazy as entertainment and especially films and video entertainment as India, this sector would be right up there as one of the biggest contributors. All over the world, as we know, the pandemic has forced people to lock themselves up indoors, and that has led to an exponential increase in the number of viewership of screens on home, that is televisions and our personal gadgets. And the social distancing norms have also led to a huge increase in the number of people who are logging on to subscribe services on the OTT platforms. On the other hand, the studios and production houses, the streaming services, and even movie theaters have had to contend with the stalled production and distribution of TV and TV shows and movies. Major movie franchises, as we all know, have also delayed their theatrical releases. And indeed, some have even chosen to just abandon the theatrical release and go live on the streaming platforms. And that has, in a sense, also disrupted, at least for the short term, their mutual relationships. And on the other hand, studios and houses, which hold the rights to very, very popular old shows, have also, as we have witnessed, enjoyed a distinct advantage, as streaming services and other channels have vied to get those rights to retain and enhance their viewership during these times. And after all, if you think of it, who would have thought that the TV series like Ramayana and Mahabharata, which took the country by storm in the 1980s, would be logging record viewership even 35 years after their first telecast on the state-owned Doordarshan. Meanwhile, even the censor board is facing new challenges in keeping a tab on whatever is released on the online platforms on the internet, as that is one which doesn't have any great degree of regulation. And especially when it comes to the business of movie theaters and cinema halls, with the indefinite closure of places that witness a very heavy footfall, these are the places which are going to view a very extended period of idleness. And when things do eventually open up, most of the multiplexes and cinema halls will have to re-engineer their core business models from the perspective of the current health crisis that we all find ourselves in. So given this backdrop that is rapidly changing the contours of cinema and video entertainment industry all over the country, all over the world rather, and to explore the way forward, we have with us today a very power-packed panel of experts. And I'm delighted to welcome Ms. Vani Tripathi Tikku, the member of the Central Board for Film Certification, who joins us from Delhi. Mr. Alok Tandon, the CEO of Inox Leisure, one of India's largest multiplex chains with 147 multiplexes, 226 screens spread across 68 cities in India. And we have Mr. Pradeep Dwivedi, the CEO of Eros Entertainment, one of India's leading OTT platforms with over 100 million registered users and nearly 8 million paying subscribers. Both the gentlemen on the panel are joining us from Mumbai. This session will be chaired by my colleague Priyal Pandey, who also joins us incidentally from Delhi. A warm welcome to all of our panelists. Thank you, Vaniji, Mr. Tandon, and Mr. Dwivedi for agreeing to lend your time for this very, very important discussion. And before I toss over the proceedings to Priyal, I would urge all of you to please visit the ORF website and also our social media platforms, including the ORF YouTube account, to gain access to the research papers and articles written by ORF faculty, and also to access our uniquely curated audiovisual content. I welcome you all once again, and I look forward to an engaging conversation. Thank you. Over to you, Priya.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us and taking this time for webinar. To all our viewers who have joined us, please feel free to use the chat box option for any intervention, any questions you have with any panelists. Direct to digital is the new buzzword and pandemic-driven cultural casualty. Is this a move born out of necessity, or will it dote the post-COVID new normal? We will be discussing how the industry is coping with stalled production and distribution, the migrant exodus and its impact, user-generated content, and changing consumption patterns. Starting with you, Vani, we have had this conversation in other forums itself, that whether OTT and VOD platforms are here to stay, will they make an impact? How do you see the changing consumption pattern noted, especially during the extensive lockdowns? How do you think the industry is preparing itself for a post-COVID world?
Thank you, Priyal, and thank you, Dhaval, for that very kind introduction you gave, to all of us, including me. You see, these are very surreal times, Priyal. I just got off a webinar which I was doing for the Cannes Film Festival, with the National Film Development Corporation and formidable filmmakers like Shekhar Kapoor, Anand Rai, and Kabir Khan, just less than an hour ago. And it's very surreal. I've been to Cannes several times. I was an official delegate from India with Prasoon Joshi year before last. I never envisaged that I will be attending the Cannes Film Festival, one of the largest film festivals of the world, not just known for its glamorous red carpet, but also for the tremendous choice of world cinema that we get there virtually. So that itself is the first part of what is surreal. I mean, if the new normal is that film festivals will be happening virtually, we will be speaking from all across the world virtually, digitally, as we are doing now, then of course, this new normal is a very big change normal for the business of entertainment. Before I come to your question about content consumption in OTT, one thing becomes very, very clear within this period. It's almost like you say that you get pushed towards technology. This is, despite the dystopian time that it is, it almost looks like we are all a part of a big dystopian film and we are all actors. But in most dystopian or apocalyptic films, you know the beginning, middle, and the end. We really don't know the beginning. I think we are in the middle of it. This is not post-COVID. This is very much in the middle of COVID. And we really don't know where the end is. But I don't want to sound ominous about it. Within the challenges of this time, lot of new normals have occurred. One new normal is you and I and our other friends are sitting here talking about what will pan out for the industry and for the entertainment world tomorrow. The second new normal is that content is in your palm now. And the differentiation between collective viewing and what is personal viewing is glaringly clear to the whole country and to the whole world. When the OTT platforms came into being, there was a lot of nervousness within exhibitors, distributors, and filmmakers. They announced the death of the theater at that time. Despite the fact that now, again, for the next couple of months or more than a year, we'll barely see any theatrical releases. There are very big films in the pipeline within the Hindi film industry, also in other Indian languages. Despite that, I think there is a new normal which is occurring, which is emerging. And that is somewhere, I will not use the word which is being used again and again. It's not combative. It's more collaborative. So somewhere there is going to be a equinox of what will be the personal content generation, creation, its reflection, and its consumption, as in the OTT and the digital platforms. And whatever was going to the theater may not see the light of the day exactly as it has been over so many decades. What does this mean? When we left the spool and came to the chip, there was a lot of nervousness because most filmmakers only knew that those kind of cameras which were about the spool and that technology. But slowly and gradually and quick enough, the technology changed. Similarly, I think the larger question we need to ask today is content going to be created and exhibited in the same way as it has been for the past few decades? And if we are able to find an answer, which also connects to audience choices here, remember, we are what we are because there is a consumption ratio of people who watch us, receive us, and give us feedback. If I, despite my hat of CBFC, am an actor and a producer, the feedback I receive also connotates my work. So similarly, we will have to look at what kind of content is being consumed, what kind of content will be created. Will we go to something called personalized screening very soon? Very much at the webinar where I was speaking, there is a new normal which may occur, which will be smaller theaters with smaller number of audience, with social distancing in mind. Because you see, this pandemic is not a joke. It's a very serious situation and it connects to people's safety. So I'm sure the exhibition and the distribution networks all across the world, not just in India, are very aware of the challenges which come in as far as exhibiting films now on will be. But what are we exhibiting is also something which will need to be understood. What kind of content? I think Twitter recently did a poll just a few days or weeks ago, which was about, are apocalyptic films going to be watched anymore? Absolutely, the answer was a thumbs down. So you know that there is a certain sensitivity involved to this time. And I think audience choices will also become a part of whatever content is being created.
Thank you, Vani. You have also answered one of my next following up questions, but I definitely agree about, the whole of cultural casuality, which I used in my introduction. With all the endeavors getting digitized, museums are now happening through live shows. What it means for the coming days and the coming generation, will they get to live the real life in the real manner, or is it going to be a completely different virtual world altogether? But moving on to Pradeep, so OTT and VOD have witnessed a phenomenal escalation in terms of both subscription and viewership. Is this trend a pent-up phenomena that we are noticing for a particular period of time, or are platforms of VOD and OTT like yours making conscious attempts to sustain this growth, to make sure it lasts longer and it is not just, COVID driven?
Thanks, Priyal, and thanks, Observer Research Foundation. At the outset, I would like to wish and hope that everybody is safe and maintaining the distancing and personal, standards of protection, because these are, as Vani also pointed out, very challenging times. And I think it's incumbent on all of us, either as businesses or as individuals, to do whatever it takes to stay safe. Coming specifically to the digital streaming business or OTT business or film production and distribution business, the human need for being entertained has spanned across centuries. We can't let a 3 or a 6 month pandemic situation turn the entire human nature on its head. It is not as if this universe and this planet has not seen pandemics before. If you take a very narrow, and I'm bringing it down from a 300, 400 pre-Shakespearean era to a current era product to a 30, 40 year horizon. There were times when people used to watch movies in theaters, and then the VHS cassettes came in and everybody said, oh, now the cinemas, theaters is going to die. Everybody's going to watch VHS at home, and who will go to the theaters? And lo and behold, you had the single screen revolution, you had the multiplex revolution. People went there for experiences far beyond that. I think as a production house that has been in existence for 40 years and as a member of an industry that has been in India for over 110 years or nearly 110 years now, I would say that the film and entertainment industry is one that has continued to keep up with the march of times and with the march of technology. OTT or streaming business is nothing but a new manifestation of the way the content is getting delivered. I don't think there is anything radical or revolutionary about it, even though it may sound like a revolutionary statement to make. The bottom line is that as people find newer means of accessing content, they will find the best way to consume that content. I think Vani pointed out very correctly, and this was a point that I also wanted to allude to, that I think one of the fundamental shifts culturally that is happening is that people's viewership patterns are changing from collective viewing as a family in front of a television or as a family or a group of friends going to a theater versus personal viewing that you view on a single screen or a mobile screen in front of you. And thereby the tone, tenor, and the context of the content that you're presenting changes. When it comes to the current 3-month period, and now I'm coming from 300 years to 30 years to the 3-month period that we're facing right now, clearly these have been revolutionary times for the OTT and the streaming business, partly because of the fact that obviously people are stuck up at home. They really have no other alternatives, either for way of entertainment or by way of getting information. And we have seen very high levels of engagement. We have seen very high levels of consumption. The average viewing times have gone up. Even if you look at the typical standard streaming apps, and I'll not refer only to the one that we have, which is Eros Now, but a bunch of others as well, people used to just limit themselves to 1 or 2 popular episodic content or web series, web originals that used to be there, and some of the more popular movies. I think the most interesting phenomenon that we are observing is a deep research and deep insights that we are getting on people trying to discover content beyond the first screen. So there is a very clear attempt by people to discover nostalgic content, content that belongs to genres that are different from just standard romantic horror, comedy and rom-coms and so on and so forth, to get into nature, wildlife. So both fiction and non-fiction content is finding a great deal of appeal. There is obviously a demographic slicing of the audiences. So the younger audiences are typically going towards shorter form contents, what we call as quickies in our platform, and there are equivalent versions, content which is between 12 to 15 minutes, high impact stories that are finding a lot of appeal amongst youth. So just to give you, for instance, when the whole lockdown started, obviously production also stopped as a consequence of the social distancing that came in, and we were also flummoxed because we could not produce any more content, and whatever we had was already getting run out. So we actually went ahead and created a web series purely out of people staying at home, a story called A Viral Wedding, which was about this young lady who's about to get married, and all her plans sort of come asunder because the pandemic has shut everything down. And how does she organize everything from pandit to friends to the groom's friends and everybody coming together in the wedding happening? So there is this use of technology that is going to now come into both production and dissemination of content. And there are a lot of other ideas around how we will move forward the needle and make sure that we are able to produce in spite of these trying circumstances. But I think just to conclude to the initial question that you have around streaming, my fundamental belief is that the human nature will not change radically. You may have forced habits coming as a consequence of the current environment that is there, but people will tend to unwind and go back to their natural state of comfort and natural state of handshakes, hugs, going out with family at some point of time. Now, what that point of time is, we don't know yet, but I'm very sanguine about the fact that we will definitely get there.
I completely agree to the point. For instance, the collective to individual viewing, it is not a phenomena of a COVID-driven world. Even before, you are seeing so much mobile entertainment happening, but I think OTT and VOD became came much more in fashion in everyone's vocabulary during the COVID time, and especially paying for content. I think for the past 10 years, major discussion used to just center around, will India be paying for content? And that has become the new normal. Moving on, I think Alok sir, every time I will be a millionaire if I start collecting money. When in any and every article, I have to justify that cinemas are here to stay. They will be here. And I don't get any comments saying, but what will happen to cinema? Why will I go and watch it in a cinema hall? I can just, download it or subscribe to on any platform. So just asking you the similar question, do you think cinema, both multiplexes and single screen, will survive? And also, what are your comments, your initial thinking on the evading of theater release to directly on digital? And do you think post-COVID there can be a collaborative mechanism created between OTT platforms and cinema halls? Can there be an exchange of content so that both respect each other and both allow each other to intermingle?
Hi, well, I would like, before I start answering these questions, I would just like to correct Dhaval today. Inox has 626 screens and not 260 or 262. So a slight correction over there. But I would say, Priyal, what you have asked is, are cinemas here going to stay? I would say yes. And emphatically, I would say that cinemas are here for the long run. Watching a movie, as I always say, is in our DNA. It was there, it is there, and it will be in our DNA because a couple of factors. We Indians, we are not an outdoor race. We people don't go trekking, we don't go hiking, we don't go rock climbing, nothing at all. We don't go to beaches. For us Indians, watching a movie is the biggest entertainment that we have. And for us, it's a social experience. Cinema lobbies are a melting pot of emotions. So however we may say that, yes, the other ways of individual watching a movie is gaining traction, I would say, yes, it's an aberration. For some time, yes, we may watch maybe web series on a 6-inch screen. But when it comes to blockbusters, when it comes to tentpole movies, would we like to see Bahubali or an Avengers or any other magnum opus on a small screen? My answer would be no. And I think that cinema halls are here to stay. As Vani rightly said that, and Dhaval also, that we have seen how theaters have survived over the last 100 to 110 years. When television came into the system, we said that that's the end of cinema halls. When color TV came in 82, 83, we said it's all over. Then VHS came, CDs came, DVDs came, all those, and today OTT. So, but still, cinema halls have become stronger. We as exhibitors have given the best to our customers. What we at Inox say that we are talking about the 3 pillars, which is luxury, service, and technology. And we want to show the film on a large screen as the director intended it to be seen. So that's what we are doing. When you talk about this conundrum of direct to digital, well, again, I'm saying it's nothing but a temporary aberration of sorts. World over, there has been existing a value chain of cinematic content which has been followed not only to ensure maximum revenue for the content creator, but also I would say to ensure maximum viewership for the content itself. The value chain has been gaining strength with the passage of time, purely because of its structure and the direction of flow, which starts with a theatrical exhibition, followed by release on a digital platform, and then it goes to other platforms. I would say, Priyal, that each phase stands to fetch a gain for the other. A robust theatrical run enhances the brand equity of the content and thereby allows content creator to demand a premium from the rest of the platforms. Also the content, and that's Pramod would be able to talk about it more. I think that any content which has done well on the theatrical run has more viewership on the digital and satellite platforms as well. And I would say that India, our country, which loves entertainment, we have enough appetite, we have enough content, and we have enough passion, which we would allow both the mediums to coexist, whether it's OTT or theaters. And if the globally prevalent accepted value chain is followed, it'll be nothing but a success. And I would say a lot has been written and discussed on this subject, but the underlying fact is, and what I feel, that this is just a temporary blip. The industry will bounce back, we will bounce back stronger, and we will continue doing whatever we have been doing till now, is show movies in a large screen. But at the same time, OTT too will survive. It's not that it will not be there. People will watch it for a different content, as it was just now said. There'll be a different product made for OTT, and both will survive. It'll be collaborative, it will not be combative. But what we are saying, where movies are concerned, which are made for the giant screen, they should be that globally prevalent norm of windowing, and then it can come on an OTT and it will benefit everybody.
I will come back to that point later. Moving on to Vani. Vani, with you being a producer, you're also seeing the huge number of migrants returning home and how it will be impacting production related activities, as well as it will be, reducing the audience size. What do you feel, or how do you think the industry is going to deal with this stalled production and distribution, wherein you are seeing a major chunk of migrants or the workers who used to be involved in the production process being absent from? And is the industry helping people involved in terms of job security? Do you think with such a gap in the value chain, is the quality going to deteriorate? Are we going to furnish poor quality just to rush up our projects?
It's a very dense, pitiful, and heartrending human story that so many of migrant workers all across the country, not just from the film industry, have had to go back home with great struggles and challenges. I must also say that there is a message in here, and a lot of my other producer friends are in denial of what I'm going to say now. We will have to recalibrate, Priyal. What is very important to understand is we are a very flabby industry when it comes to production. We don't know what being lean is. One, light comes, there are 3 light boys who come with it. Now, I should not be misconstrued as saying that people's employment and job opportunities should be taken away. The industry is labor intensive. There is human resource quotient, which is very important in film production. But look at all over the world. For example, we have a friend who does grips. Grips is this technical thing, which is the designing of the whole thing as far as lights and equipment is concerned. This one person sitting in Mumbai does grips work for at least 5 Hollywood producers. How does he manage it? How can one guy, for which otherwise we get 10, 15, 20, 30 people do it? What has happened over the years is, and this is called lazy production, lazy film shooting, and being very lazy about the fact that there are almost 40 people hanging on every film set, which are absolutely not required to be there. And obviously, this may sound very bizarre, but one of the big lessons from this pandemic is that we will have to cut the flab out. I don't see an opportunity or a situation anytime soon where I will be able to get 200 people on a film set anytime now. And what does that mean? That doesn't mean that I'm going to stop telling stories. I will die if I stop telling stories. So many of us have no other lives. We are storytellers. We are anyway a land of kathavachas. But we will have to recalibrate what we look at in terms of skill sets. Skilling is the new normal, which means one person who's very capable of doing 5 things, which we have not paid attention to, which will also mean that we will have to create resource and opportunity. And I'm not saying that a spot boy on a set is not capable of being a light boy. He is not just capable of being a light boy, he's also capable of doing so many other things. But because we get people on a certain wage, which is very nominal, and we think, okay, these 5, 10, 15 people, I mean, this is also time to look at empowering these people. Why should they remain as migrant workers all their lives? Why should we not look at empowering these people and creating opportunities for them, which also gives them better livelihood and gives a better life to their children? I think this is a cathartic moment. And if we are pragmatic about it, we will cut out the flab. We will look at lower production budgets. I will tell you something which came up in the Cannes webinar, and I've been thinking about it for past 1 week after reading a report. Film insurances are all-time high now. Why? Because now COVID insurance is a part of it. And just as we were finishing the last webinar, Shekhar said this, that he's starting a new project in the UK, and the insurance itself on his set now is more than 2 million. So we must understand, we are not cutting down costs, we are not saving money here. We will have to insure people for their safety and their security and their health. And you cannot have, after all, shooting cinema is very intimate in its business. Somebody is right here on my face. Somebody is right in front of me. Where are all these social distancing norms that we go on talking about? I recently saw the SOPs which have come out for film shooting in Mumbai. I'm sorry to say this, and maybe nobody else will have the gumption. It's bizarre. Nobody above age of 65 can come on the set. If I have to shoot a family, I get my own family. What does it mean get your own family? What, my own family will now become actors overnight and they will start shooting with me. So, we have to put our heads together here. We cannot be foolhardy and remain in denial. This changes a lot of things as far as film production and film production opportunities in the industry is concerned. And it's not just changes in India, it changes uh, almost pan-global. I mean, this is a pan-global situation. But look at Hollywood, look at French, look at European cinema. They already, it almost looks like they were preemptive about it and had started looking at lean units quite a while ago. We have to learn, and if we will not learn, again, more than the digital versus the exhibition theater, holocaust that we go on discussing these days, I am more concerned about production and how film production will go forward. For me, I'm already working on a series which was British colonial India, and I could not have done without 100 people on the set. I'm already thinking of taking a step back and telling another story, which is more intimate, where I can make do with 10 set of people or maybe 50 people on the set. And I'm ready to compromise that because I think people who work with me are also my responsibility as a producer. I cannot be foolhardy and selfish and grasping in nature and say, oh, okay, we will see. Now these people get employment. Arey, is waqt to jaan ki amaan hai logon ko. You have to actually save their lives. How can you start thinking that today the lockdown is over, tomorrow we go back on the set as if nothing happened? So I think this is the time to also take a step back and do a rethink. That's why I use this word recalibrate. We will have to recalibrate the way we look at our stories, the way we shoot them, the way we produce them. And this also includes the creme de la creme of the industry. I can already say in personal conversations in the past few weeks, most of my friends who are big producers, directors, and actors are thinking as to what is the way forward for them.
On that note, when you're mentioning physical distancing and social distancing, because socially, through the usage of technologies like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, people are socially together. One of the social events of a family weekend is going to cinema. And as Alok mentioned, that luxury, service, and technology is one of their traits. I want to ask you, how are you maintaining and ensuring a footfall in the cinema hall? What steps and actions are being taken for the recovery process to mitigate perceived risk from social gathering? What innovative strategies are being employed in India as well as in the world to let people, to allow people to just come back to the cinema halls?
Well, you rightly put it that how do I ensure people come back? And for me, the biggest challenge is to win the confidence of our guests, to ensure that they come back to our cinemas as they used to do it in normal times. And let me also tell you that we are looking at the post-COVID phase as a new chapter in the customer life cycle, where the trust has to be regained. I'm using the word regain because they already had trust in us, but now we have to regain that trust again. What we have done till now, Priyal, is that we have looked at various ways of social distancing, of sanitization, and that entire charter which we have made, we have called it the INOX Safety Committee. The INOX Safety Commitment. And in that, we have divided it into two parts. One is hygiene related, and the other is to ensure social distancing. So whether it is when our guests come in, that the temperature is checked at the entrance, and this is there for everybody. Everyone who enters the cinema hall or the cinema precincts, the temperature is taken. We have paperless transactions for ticket and food ordering. We'll be having sanitizer stations. As I say that people always used to see fire extinguishers everywhere. Today they'll see a new thing, which is a sanitizing station, and they'll be placed at key locations. Any area where a public touches a lot, all the hard surfaces would be sanitized on an hourly basis, and auditoriums, there'll be fresh air coming in, there'll be exhaust after every show, there'll be again deep cleaning done at the end of the night. So a lot of steps we have taken to ensure that people come back to us. Where F&B is concerned, we will be curtailing our menu, and also we'll be using the single-use disposable packaging so that that crockery, cutlery is not used again. Should a person or a guest want to buy a small PPE kit, which we are saying a pair of gloves, or a mask or a sanitizing lotion, we'll be selling it in our property. There'll be squares or circles marked at the entrance, at the box office, at the lobby, so that there's proper social distancing amongst people. We have already come up with an algorithm where our seating and software is concerned for booking a ticket, that that the seat is left adjacent next to a family or a group, so that there are no two unknown people sitting next to each other. Movie shows are getting rescheduled in a way that there'll be a lot of gap between the two shows. We will ensure that the entrance, the interval don't clash of any two movies. So these are lots of things, Priyal, which we will be doing over a period of time to see that when movies come and when we open, today we have no clue when we will open. We have made various representations to the government of India and to various state governments. We've been told it will be a part of the Unlock 3. So we are waiting for that, but we are taking this time to prepare ourselves that when we open, we open with a bang and people come to us as they used to come in earlier days. Yes, there will be a fear psychosis, but our job is to ensure that by word of mouth, it spreads that cinemas are a safe place to go. And we want to see that hustle bustle in the lobby once again.
Definitely. Moving on to Pradeep, consumption of content has for a very long time been dominated by tier 1 cities. Now with reduction in internet tariffs, inexpensive affordability of smartphones, VOD platforms are or are intending to cater to people hailing from rural areas. Are you focusing on non-Hindi content to gather more attention and viewership of our audience? And as you mentioned, the viral wedding, which is basically in the ethos of user-generated content, are we going to see flourishing of user-generated content, people shooting themselves on their smartphones and such kind of content?
So there are a couple of dimensions to what you just said, and I'd like to kind of just slice it that way. At the outset, when you look at just the diversity that's available as an opportunity in India, and whether you look at a tier 1 metro centers versus tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and our ability to prime content and create content that appeals to audiences across the board, clearly there's a lot of work happening there, and significantly a lot more can happen. And I think as we are discovering newer audiences that are now, armed with 4G smartphones, who have access of who like a particular kind of content, you are seeing at the initial stages, for lack of a better word, a lot of puerile content going out, because there is an urban male audience that thrives on that. But I think that's an initial phase that you would see in any such proliferation of content. You would have meaningful content going out in the next phase, where there are various segments of society that will start consuming it. And I think there is a lot of effort on the part of content producers, who incidentally are hailing from those parts of the country themselves, because then they have the sensibilities, both cultural sensibilities as well as interesting stories to tell from those areas, and finds its way into either web series or into the movies. The other interesting angle that you pointed out, which we believe is an important part, is just the sheer diversity of languages that exists in this country. When we talk of OTT or when we talk of movies, typically the Bollywood and the Hindi cinema takes the precedence over anything else. But there is a very vibrant, movie theater, movie scene in India, in Tamil, in Telugu, in Malayalam, in Marathi, in Bengali. And I think it is high time that not just that these do not remain limited to the centers of geographies in which they are present, but big streaming platforms and OTT platforms such as ourselves also take that forward. For example, we have a movie platform, Eros Now, on which we have close to 12,000 titles. You'd be surprised that close to 5,500 titles are in regional languages. And we see a huge demand. Even as a movie production house, when we go out and do movies, we do movies in Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Bengali, Marathi, and we are not restricted to Hindi. Every Bazirao Mastani or Vicky Donor of ours or Manmarzia of ours, which Anandra incidentally made, it's a joint venture with us, gets a lot of popularity. But then there's a bunch of movies that we do in regional languages, which do not, at least in popular discourse, gets discussed in webinars such as these. But there's a definite love that the audiences display towards these. So the way we look at it is that the content engine has to be a constant, it has to be a constant machinery that is primed towards gaining insights from the market demand and being able to create content in a compelling fashion over a period of time. Now, obviously, there is a cinematic art around creation of a movie. The artist wants the maximum, the largest possible canvas to demonstrate it. So if you were to ask a Chris Nolan and ask him to release Tenet on a small screen or a mobile screen, he would, kind of throw you out of the room. But definitely, there is content that is available where the content producer is content enough to go ahead and actually put it on a streaming platform or an OTT platform. This whole debate about theatrical versus OTT is again, as Alok also pointed out, bit of a conundrum that is of a very short term in nature. I do believe there have been movies and content produced in the past which have gone straight to TV or straight to theaters, or theatrical windows have been one weekend, and it has then sort of disappeared off the screens altogether. Because from an economic standpoint as well, for theaters to kind of make money, they need to have a certain occupancy ratios. And if the movie is not really finding that kind of appeal, the whole concept of windowing, as Alok referred to, having a 6-month or a 3-month window of theatrical, followed by a television release, followed by a digital, followed by a long tail of CD DVD production and in-flight and on-demand kind of viewing. I would say that the entire value chain is now turning on its head thanks to the COVID era. Television is no longer the first port of call. Digital has actually trounced both television and theatrical as the first port of call. The reasons are economic as much as the reason are quality of content led. When you look at economic reasons, clearly a producer that has invested a certain amount of money in a movie would be loath to wait for 3 or 6 months, accruing interest on the capital that they've already invested, hoping that at some point of time the theaters will open and then they will be able to monetize that money, just because there's been a windowing pattern that has existed for decades or years or so on and so forth. The fact is that if they see a meaningful enough economic return by going to an OTT streaming platform, and a recent example is whether you look at Gulabo Sitabo in Amazon Prime Video, or a bunch of others that are going to get announced, and I think there's enough public speculation around that, you would have a scenario where producers would go ahead and do that. And even for the streaming platforms, this is an opportunity which is both economic and a consumer-centric approach for them. If they don't give fresh content to their own audiences, how do they ensure their survival and their expansion? So it is not really, to my mind, debilitating or impacting the business in the short term. It is in fact allowing the expansion of the pie. And I think once this dust will settle, you will find that, as we are all seeming to agree, there is a loyal audience that will go back to the theaters for the experience that you get. And there will be a much more diverse content supply side ecosystem that will develop, which will cater to not just the tier 1 audiences, but tier 2 and 3 audiences across languages. And more importantly, intrinsic Indian stories that will find a stage on a global platform as well. Now, in our instance, for example, we have recently merged, and in fact, we've announced a merger. We are in the process of closing that merger with a Hollywood studio. Now, they've been doing movies with the marquee stars such as Anne Hathaway, Matthew McConaughey, Hugh Grant, and so on and so forth. And they've been sharply focused on film production. We've been doing marquee movies in India. The idea is that we have a streaming platform where we can collaborate, not only do what we do best in Indian movies and Hollywood and Bollywood movies, but also do collaboration where our talent gets a global stage to perform. Just a very familiar example that I've quoted in a couple of places, but I think, I love quoting it every time. I mean, look at Parasite, right? It won the best Oscar award this year. It's a quintessential movie set in Seoul, clearly in Korean language, with a lot of Korean cultural sensibilities. Yet every one of us who have seen this movie finds something unique and relatable to that movie in the context in which we operate. Whether it is the aspiration of people who are suppressed or economically deprived to get better things in life, whether it is the jealousy and the trust elements that is there, whether it is the love between a family and the need to protect your own, whether it is the aspiration to, academically and romantically grow better and bigger and do more things. The human values don't change, intrinsically. If I was to take a slightly different segue and go into, the factor which you spoke about, whether Ramayana or Mahabharata is now getting a lot of appeal and audience. It is not, and I again believe that there is so much cultural richness in our history that if you take out the religious lens out of it and put it in a socio-cultural lens, the human interest story that come out of India historically and going forward have a huge world stage to capture on. So I think this whole debate of OTT versus theater is actually very minuscule in the larger scheme of things. I, in fact, fairly believe that we will have brilliant stories coming out of India. And, tragedy as it is, the migrant story that, what Vani spoke about, our heart goes out to people who have had to walk hundreds of miles to their home without water, without food, and, in situations that is inhuman. And in spite of all of that, in this tragedy, you will find stories of human interest. You will find stories of corona warriors, doctors, nurses, medical patients, the transportation staff who have gone above and beyond the call of duty and done phenomenal service to the society at large. And these human interest stories will be told. These stories will come out of the annals of news and annals of practical experiences of people, and will be wonderful, testimony to the resilience of the human spirit. And I have every belief that the content universe will become richer by this experience, by this tragedy that the human race is feeling, and we will have more exciting, more interesting, more inspiring stories to tell. So I believe the future is very bright.
All right. Taking from that point and moving towards Vani, Vani also mentioned initially that, a different kind of content can come maybe not immediately, but after some time. At the moment, do you think escapist cinema, which will divert people's attention from what is happening, will be beneficial, or content which is grappling the reality is somewhat needed? What do you think, like from the CBFC, you are a member of CBFC board, you see content which is both contemporary as well as which is just to entertain people. What do you think at the contemporary moment, what kind of content do you feel will be proliferating more?
Well, as I said, I saw this on a social media platform just a few days ago. Nobody wants to see any apocalyptic or dystopian stuff for now. Obviously, you don't. You are in the middle of this dystopia. You've been locked down. Nobody in this, in present times, in our lifetimes, have we ever been locked down for so many months? I mean, people are on the verge of their mental health issues are so, glaring right now, on the verge of frustration. So obviously dystopia and apocalyptic kind of content is definitely out. I'm very, very sure about it. But, there's no one size fits all to what audience choices are, Priyal. But I want to respond first, before speaking about that, to one thing Alokji said. Yeah, Alokji, you will do the sanitization bit and you will get the gloves out and you will do everything. But one guy will cough in the audience and the whole hall will run out of their homes, run out, and really, so, it's like, it's not really a fear. It's a truth. It's a reality. And, if you will have any access to those families who are going through this Holocaust, who have their near and dear ones who are ridden by the virus, and what kind of, challenges, increasingly infrastructural challenges, lack of hospitals, even lack of, because there is no medication, there is nothing. And despite the fact that we are going on and listening from virologists from all across the world that by next summer we'll have a vaccine, let me put this on record. From what I've understood, also speaking to a couple of doctors, it will be a preventive, not a curative vaccine. And probably half of the world's population by next summer will be infected, if not affected. The difference between infected and affected is yet to be understood. I could be a carrier and I could be asymptomatic, and I may not develop those symptoms for next several weeks, and yet I may infect a lot of people, by just being around them. So one is that trust level. One guy coughs and everybody's going to run for their money, they're just going to run out. Number two, I think what we are discounting here, Priyal, is the pace of technology is very, very fast. We are talking about Ramayana and Mahabharata, what happened 35 years ago. Very soon, you will have a tale within a tale within a tale within a tale available to you, and you will be in middle of Kurukshetra, being Krishna and Arjun. No, really, that is the new normal which is going to occur. Now, whether that is happening theatrically or in your palm goes on to see. The way the gaming industry, which is almost screenplay driven today. Look at the most expensive games of the world, which, my nephews are on it every day. They are young boys. And day before yesterday, because we are all sitting at home together, and we obviously peek into each other's content also these days. We are not just watching films on the OTT platforms together. We are watching. I was flummoxed at what he was playing. It was a whole absolutely looked like a Michael Mann film. And it almost looked like, I was in the middle of it without even wearing my VR or my AR spec for that moment, or that goggle. What I'm trying to say is we are discounting the pace of technology. In the next 1 year, if films don't release, don't you think that we'll just continue to watch TV and Ramayana and Mahabharata and OTT? there will be something so drastic which would have occurred in terms of the technological advancement of telling stories. You and I will be surprised at what's going to happen. And as far as the Mahabharata goes, let's go to the empirical craft of storytelling which the country belongs to. Sanjay, Dhritarashtra, Gandhari and all the other characters are not telling you the same story. Everybody is in the part of the same story telling you another point of view of the same story. What does it mean? It is a story within a story within a story. So India and our narratives are very much a part of this complexity which is called the layering of storytelling. That definitely cannot be taken away from us. But yes, I do agree and what Mr. Dwivedi said. I think going local will be becoming global. And I think most OTT platforms, why suddenly Agra, Jhansi, Meerut, Banaras, Hamai, Tumai, this kind of language is suddenly all over the place. I mean, I also don't like this broad stroking. I belong to an academic family and I also speak several languages myself. I don't like this generalization, but having said that, when was the last time you saw 5 films of different genre talking about that part of India, which was not supposed to be the mainstream of commercial filmmaking or mainstream filmmaking? So I think there is a huge change as far as narratives is concerned. Narratives are more real. They are more closer to home. They are about our neighbors and our stories. We were scared to tell these stories. And also, let's not forget, the last decade also belongs to the women and those protagonists. The misnomer in the industry used to be that if the centripetal character of a movie is a woman, the film will not get financed or it will not get produced or people will not see it. From NH10 and Dirty Picture onwards to whatever you saw last of Dam Laga Ke Aisha and so many other films, that narrative is also a huge change and women are the centripetal, force in this narrative. So I think let's not just look at life the way we want to look at it. In the next 1 year, I think there's going to be a huge change in technology and also storytelling and what we see. Yes, I always say one thing doesn't get away or doesn't go to its end or a finale. Nobody says that the theater will be dead. Or nobody will say OTT will become redundant. That is not happening at all. That beauty and glamour and love and compassion of cinema does not go away. But that cinema is also available to me now here, which is my choice. I always say OTT is a democratization of content in the country. I can watch what I want to watch alone. I don't have to be with 700 or 70 or 7 people to watch it. Which also means as a consumer, I have a choice which I can exercise. But all these narratives will coexist. But let's also remember the pace of technology is very, very fast. For next 1 year, if films don't get theatrically released, it's going to be something else that you and I will be talking about, Priyal. Same time next year.
No, I totally agree. What you are saying is absolutely right. Technology will change. Things will change in future going forward. And today, when I do not get content, for example, if I don't get movies to show, what do I do with my theaters? And not from now, I would say for the last a year and a half, we are looking at what can we do with the theaters, the alternate content. We have done live streaming after taking all due permissions for the Cricket World Cup. We have shown various matches, again, after taking due permission, because we fall under the Cinematographic Act. And Mani, you know that until I get a censor certificate, I cannot show anything on my screens.
Yes.
But after taking all these permissions, we have shown other things rather than cinema. We have tied up with the NBA, we have tied up with PBL, we have tied up with other sport companies or leagues to show them on our screens. We have, again, after talking to the licensing authorities and others, have had one-act plays, have had various seminars in our theaters. So things are changing. Today, I would say that, again, we are giving various representations to the government of India that allow cinema halls to directly show sport events. It's a F1 race, is a 2-hour race. If I get permission, I would love to show it. And today there are people who would love to watch those things on the giant screen. If there's a concert taking place, please allow me to beam that live into my theaters. So again, we have given various representations to the government of India, to various, and this falls under the center, under CBFC also. So we are looking at ways to show more content. Yes, storytelling will change. things will be different. Today, gaming is big, and for the first time, I was surprised in the last 2 years the way I've seen gaming increase and youngsters getting into it. It's a billion-dollar industry, I would say.
Absolutely.
It's a
And
billion
it's
dollar industry.
screenplay driven. It almost looks, it's actually shot like a film. It's so real life like. The characters almost look like they're actually actors. It almost, somebody looks like a Brad Pitt, somebody looks like a George Clooney.
Yes.
It's 360-degree animation. I mean, if you don't understand, I mean, you'll just look at it and you'll say, ye to film hai. This is a whole film playing in front of you.
And also there's
And
live
you're in the
commentary
middle of
going on.
it. You are in the middle of it. You can change the beginning, middle, and the end. I mean, what fun. Imagine you are the director, writer, and the screenplay, everything.
Absolutely.
You know, all in one, rolled into one.
And you said
One second, panelists, we are running out of the time, so I will just direct last few questions. To Alok especially, there is this question on the chat box that Golden Jubilee, Silver Jubilee, is houseful going to be the new term which is going to become redundant? And following up on that, to all the panelists, if they can quickly, after Alok sir, mention what do you think will be the future of this sector and what expansions can we expect in both entertainment and exhibition industry? First to you, Alok sir.
Okay, let me tell you that, yes, we don't have Silver Jubilee and Golden Jubilees any longer, but let me tell you, the eyeballs which see that movie in the first 2 to 3 weeks is much more than what people saw the movie during Golden Jubilee and Silver Jubilee. Because the thing is that it's carpet bomb today. The producers take out thousands of prints. We multiplex players show it in 15 to 20 shows a day. More people come to it. And I would say whatever little knowledge of consumer behavior I have, audiences in those days were more determined to watch a movie which had houseful shows. But then thanks to our rigorous screen and seat edition, we make our best effort that guests do not go back without seeing a movie. We ensure that there's a movie starting after every 40 minutes. So I think that will continue. You may not call it a silver or a golden jubilee, but you will have houseful people coming in and watching the movie. But then, as I said, distancing precautions and measures for some time are there. We will have to live with that, but that's only for a blip, maybe in a couple of months or maybe maximum a year. We go back to normal as soon as the vaccine is discovered or found out, or people are inoculated, we'll be back to a normal. And I would say that the feeling of lining up to enter the cinema, for me as a cinema operator, I love that feeling. And the memories of rushing back to pick up your favorite snack from the concession counter, or the loud cheers, the joyful lobbies, I think that it's a matter of time before we come back to those days. And that's not far away.
On that point, we will be moving to Mr. Pradeep. We also have a question for you from the chat box. Currently, there is no advertisement on Eros platforms. Will that change after merging with STX?
So that's a very specific question, but let me just address that. Eros now continues to be a subscriber VOD platform, much like the platform Netflix, etc., where you don't see ads. We don't have any intention of showing ads on that platform. And we are evaluating other technology alternatives to launch what could be advertising supported platforms. I hope that addresses the question. Quickly coming back to just a summarization that you wanted us to do. And I really want to take on a point from what Vani said about technology. I am personally, and we as an organization are a huge believer on leveraging the power of technology to be able to deliver compelling content to audiences. You know, it is not just in the consumer or the consumption side of the ecosystem that you will have technology playing a significant role. It is in the content production as well. And, you know, as you were speaking, I was aching to actually mention the fact that, you know, if you look at a game like Fortnite, which is run by Epic Games, and they have an engine called Unreal Engine, then the Unreal Engine can create these virtual universes, which are near real-time universes. We can do
yes, absolutely, yeah.
Use all of those technologies to create compelling content and movie. We are working on movies which are, you know, mythological in context, but are being developed completely out of these virtual reality and VFX technologies, which will become the wave of the future, and it will become a way of the, you know, the way the technology will deliver these stories going forward. Most importantly, I think at the fundamental level, the need for people to get entertained and compelling nature of the storytellers to come up with exciting content that appeals to sensibilities of all kinds will remain an essential human trait. I am, for one, I'm always been very positive about where this industry is headed. And this temporary phase that we are all facing in every industry, our industry is also going through that. But I think we'll come out wiser. We'll come out having learned something out of it. And we will see glory days coming back once again, and perhaps a completely new horizon of newer glory days. So that would be my view.
Moving to Vani on that note. Vani, just in addition to the previous question, also there is this formulation of Digital Content Complaint Council. What do you think, how it is going to be placed in all the direct to digital happening, with all the expansion in the digital sphere? Do you have any comments, and what holds the future for?
Actually, CBFC works only on the theatrical content, and we actually have nothing to do with the OTT. There is no regulation on OTT at all as yet. And there is a lot of discussion. There's a whole discussion board around it. I mean, that's actually between the ministry and the policy, and the council, I think, is still work in progress from what I've understood. I think OTT is still a very nascent platform, as far as storytelling this is concerned. We still don't know how many eyeballs it has. So we should first understand this space. I keep telling people we have to first understand how many people are consuming this content, how it is being consumed, and what the consumer choices are. I do feel the lens of film certification should not be used in OTT, because I think, as I said, the distinction between what is in my palm and is personal and what is collective. When you watch a movie in a theater with 1,000 odd people who are strangers to you and you don't even know them, the impact is completely different from watching it actually in private or watching it with 3 members of your family. And that distinction needs to be understood. But I think self-regulation is the way. The industry has to, and also the streaming platforms have to take cognizance and responsibility for what they stream. Parental control, they need to empower people and consumers about parental controls. They just take it upon themselves and think everybody will understand what parental control is. Parental control is a fairly new paradigm as far as India is concerned. People do have a lot of net connectivity. We are a very data-friendly country. But as far as responsibilities towards the data is concerned, people need to be empowered. There's nothing wrong in doing capacity building as far as all that is concerned. But self-regulation as of now is what the way forward is. They have to invest their time, resource, money, and also understanding. I must also put this on record that every country has a cultural nuance. For example, in France, frontal nudity is not a problem, gangster films are a problem. But in the United States, frontal nudity is a huge problem, and gangster films is what they are known for. Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese, so on and so forth. So every country has a certification board and a cultural nuance to content which is put out. Also for the collective. I think similar kind of cultural nuance of India also has to be understood. What works in America for a 16-year-old may not necessarily work for a 16-year-old in India. And as far as that is understood, I'm sure self-regulation will be understood. But finally, I have to say one thing. Nietzsche very famously said, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And COVID as a reality will probably not kill us all. But as far as the industry is concerned, definitely we'll emerge stronger, hopefully smarter and more pragmatic. And that's why I'm saying these times have also been times of inward thinking for the industry. I know so many of my friends who are big producers and directors have actually taken a step back because never in their lives had they thought that this will actually happen to them and to their co-workers and to people around them. And I think for now, what we need to understand is how do we create stories which do not crowd our space is our biggest reality. And crowding the space is also the mind space, but it's also the physical space. How we can create distinctions of creating those barriers is a wrong word, distancing platforms where we can work together, but yet, keep people safe. I think that is the biggest reality. But if this will not kill us, I'm sure this will make us strong.
On that note, I would like to thank all our panelists for joining us, all the audience members who were constantly posting questions. I hope I have taken most of your questions. And finally, just to summarize, this lockdown has highlighted several essentiality and necessities in life, which includes internet and has digitized several other endeavors. It has paved way for new technologies like Microsoft Teams and Zooms. And one thing to summarize from this discussion will be, cinema and theater will still have a vintage and a vantage value attached to them. And but with the coming of VOD platforms and other brands, viewers have been kept engaged, distracted, and certain form of sanity has been kept alive even in these deplorable and deteriorating times.